Zacc, what is the first project that I can start to work on to make sure that I'm safe?
Okay, so these projects go in order from someone is screaming at you because you're in the middle of the road and you're about to get hit by a truck, to we've got all the time in the world to sit, on some chairs by a sunset and enjoy life and talk slowly about philosophy. And we are in this project, you're in the middle of the street, you're about ready to get hit by a truck type of situation. So if it comes across in the beginning as very directive, that's because it is. There are a few things you have to knock out. So the first project is plug the holes in the boat. You've got a vessel, you need to make sure it's seaworthy, and you have some holes. You may have some holes. Let's just talk about what they are. And if they exist, you got to plug them, and then we'll move on to project 2. But the main holes are if you do not have, and these are, by the way, they're lettered instead of numbered. If it's lettered in the book, that is, it is a simultaneous project, meaning these 3 projects are not more important or in a particular order. You need to allocate time and money to all 3 at the same time.
Okay.
So 1 is an emergency fund. You need to knock out having an emergency fund so that if for whatever reason a car breaks down, appliances at home go out, medical expenses that are unexpected, like anything like that, having an emergency fund protects you from having to dip into accounts or things that cost you fees or extra taxes. Meaning if your retirement account has a 10% penalty plus taxes to get it out, that's a shame. If you have to put it on a credit card and pay 20+% interest, that's a shame. So we're trying to avoid all of those things. And having the emergency fund, the goal is you never use it, but it's there and available for you. It's a fact. Calculating how much is usually a factor of how many months of expenses you want to preserve. Okay. So you think about it as a number of months, as a time thing. If you have strong income, so income stability is one factor. Whether you are a 2-income or 1-income household, that's another factor. And your own risk tolerance is a third factor. People with a really high risk tolerance hate watching cash not earn money.
Yeah.
And then people with a low risk tolerance have hundreds of thousands of dollars in the bank. So it's pretty normal for those really, really more wealthy but scared folks to have big, big banks. That I look at it as 2 to 3 months for the highest risk tolerant people with 2 incomes and stable incomes. If any of those factors change, we're going to push that up to 6 to 12 months. But anywhere, the technical rule is 1-income household should have 6 months, 2-income households should have 3 months. That's the easy rule. That doesn't apply to everybody because risk tolerance and family dynamics and things like that change.
Cool.
So that is the emergency fund. The other task is solving for the big what ifs. So this is task B within this category. The big what ifs are like, what if you pass away? Well, you need some life insurance. And we've talked about this in the past, I think, but it's just keep it simple, keep it low cost, buy term life insurance, consider buying it outside of your employer coverage, or you'll end up like me. I had cancer, changed jobs, and now I can't get new life insurance very easily at all because I had it through my previous employer.
Yeah.
So life insurance is one. The other one that people forget about most often is disability insurance, and it actually is needed more often than life insurance. So disability insurance is important because if I don't die and I'm still alive, but I can't do my job, that puts my family in, frankly, a worse financial situation than if I had passed away and I had life insurance. Because now they don't have the life insurance. They have the expenses of me not being able to do as much and I'm not earning. So anyway, that disability insurance is super important there. And then guardianship is the third one. This one's tricky because it's usually part of a foundational estate plan. And we'll talk about that later in Project 4. But Project 1, if you die, and this is still part of the what if. What if you die? Who is going to take care of your kids?
Yeah.
That's a big deal. That's probably the biggest deal out of all that we've talked about so far. And it's the one thing that people fail to do until way later when they think they have a big estate to handle and they do an estate plan. So I would at least knock out guardianship. A lot of estate planners will do the guardianship documents for you without getting all the way into the estate plan. So it's worth exploring somebody that can at least organize that for you so you don't have some of the sad stories where kids are with people that shouldn't be. Liability insurance is the fourth one. This is more of just making sure your property and casualty insurance is in place for cars, home, auto, and then considering an umbrella policy that those are cheap and they can add another $1 million or $2 million of liability coverage over and above what your property and casualty does. So Nowadays, if somebody gets hurt like on your property and you only had a certain amount of coverage, umbrella on top of that will help cover it even further. So those are your big what ifs. What if you die? What if you become disabled? What if you die? Who gets your kids? And then what if you had a big liability and you need that covered? If you've got all 4 of those covered, we get to move on. But that's
Perfect.
task B.
Awesome. What is task C?
High interest debt.
Okay.
So this is now where we're starting to get to the point where you're actually moving backwards on your financial progress, right? Because the interest rates are 20+% right now. And paying that in just, it is so difficult. So you have to work on getting high interest debt out. Now, some people say, well, what's high interest? Relative to wherever market rates are at the time. But I personally think anything above 10% is high interest.
Yeah.
And I would love to never have anything over 3 or 4%, or have no debt, right? But anything between 5 and 10, starting to wonder a little bit about it. But where market rates are today, I mean, a lot of home mortgages are 5, 6, 7. So I wouldn't stress quite as much about those. But anything above 10, I'm for sure thinking, how would you get rid of that as quick as possible?
All of these, it's interesting because you talked about a truck's coming and you're yelling and trying to help people be aware of what's happening. It seems like if I can get through these, I had handcuffs on and now the handcuffs are almost off. Like there's just not only financially, but also mentally, right? If I'm not worried about quite as much, if I know I've got an emergency fund, I know that if something tragic or catastrophic happens to me, there's an insurance policy in place and that I'm not kind of a slave to debt. So that's what it feels like from Project One is you're unlocking some handcuffs up.
Totally. And I haven't asked you how you feel about it at all. I'm just like, get it done. I don't care how you feel about it. Just get it done. And so we're going to get into how you feel about money in a minute, right? Yes. But these are ones where you probably don't need to talk that much about it. You just do it.
I do think it's important for anybody watching this who does get the book that they hear the sound that you made and you will reference in the book.
Okay, so we were on a trip. We'd never been to Amsterdam. My wife is a big World War II history fan. So we went and saw the Anne Frank house and did all of that. And if you know Amsterdam, it's a city of bikes. And it's complicated to get across the street in Amsterdam because you got pedestrian, bike, car, train or tram, car, bike, pedestrian. Those are it's like a game of Frogger, and my kids call it Crossy Road because that's the app now, but Frogger from Atari ages, right? So she is deaf in her left ear from a brain tumor, so she couldn't hear. She can't tell the direction of sound anywhere because she has only one point of reference. Mm-hmm. So there was a cyclist coming from behind and turning, and we were at the intersection going straight, crossing the intersection. She didn't hear it at all. She didn't hear the bike at all. We had a green, but the biker was coming and I was standing behind her. And I don't know what sound I made, but it sounded like some primeval like animal of some type. I just screamed. There was no word. There was nothing. I scared my whole family so bad. And I scared her so bad, she froze and the biker barely missed her. And so success. That's all I got to say. It worked.
When I read that, I was just like, I got to know what that sound was.
I don't think the microphone would handle it very well, and I don't remember exactly. But my kids looked at me like, "What was that?"
But I think it's a great illustration or example of what you're talking about here. If you're letting people know, heads up, danger, get that taken care of, and now we can move on to some other things.
Right.